Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your complex source material and really drill down to the essential, actionable insights you need.
Today, we are tackling a topic that is, well, it's universal in the modern working world, but it can be utterly destructive if it's left unchecked.
We're talking about professional pressure. And specifically, we're looking at how these high-stakes, deadline-driven fields, and our sources focus heavily on software development here,
Mm.
how they manage that pressure before it ends up managing them.
Right. And this deep dive is really built around a profound realization, I think. It's that pressure is inevitable, you know?
It's always going to be there.
But the chaos that so often comes with it, that's a choice. Our sources give us this really rigorous framework for telling the difference between a true professional who actually thrives under that pressure
And the other person.
and the individual who just collapses into this vortex of stress. And often they mistake that very collapse for some kind of genuine dedication.
And to really anchor this whole discussion, the material kicks off with an analogy that is, it's designed to shock you into a new perspective. We want you to stop thinking about a missed feature deadline for a minute
Yeah, this is bigger.
and start thinking about life and death. So try to visualize this with us.
Hmm.
You're having an out-of-body experience. You're sort of floating above an operating table, and you look down,
Yeah.
and you see yourself.
It's you on the table.
And a surgeon is performing open heart surgery on you. This isn't just, a tough day at the office for them. This person is operating under a literal deadline.
They are trying to save your life.
Yeah.
Right now. The pressure it's absolute.
The stakes could not be higher.
No. And this scenario, it immediately frames the whole question of professional conduct in the most unforgiving terms imaginable. We're not talking about corporate politics or team dynamics here.
Come on.
We're talking about pure competence, when competence is the only thing that matters.
So with that image in your head, ask yourself, how do you want that doctor, the one holding your life in their hands, to behave? Do you want them to be calm, collected, issuing these clear, precise orders to their nurses and anesthetists?
Following the checklist.
Right. Strictly adhering to their decades of training, all those discipline procedures they've learned.
Or do you want the other version? The one who's sweating profusely, swearing loudly.
Slamming surgical instruments down on the tray.
Exactly. Throwing their gloves off in frustration and just continuously blaming hospital administration because, they have an unrealistic schedule to finish this triple bypass.
When you lay it out like that, the choice is just so obvious.
Yeah.
And yet, when we look at these high-demand fields like engineering or finance,
Yeah.
we often normalize, and sometimes we even glorify, that second person, the stressed, chaotic one. We put a label on it like hustle or dedication.
That's where our mission for today really comes into focus. We are here to extract the essential, proven knowledge from these sources about how true professionals maintain that surgeon-like calm.
That decisiveness.
And crucially, that procedural discipline, even when the external pressure feels completely overwhelming. We're learning how to replace the performance of panic with the practice of poise.
Okay, so let's start with that foundation. What is the definition of the professional standard? We need to know what ideal we're aiming for.
Absolutely. The sources are very clear on this. The professional developer, and you can extend this to any high-stakes professional, is someone who is calm and decisive under pressure.
Calm and decisive.
They adhere to their established disciplines, their training. They know, on a fundamental level, that this structured approach is the best. In fact, it's often the only predictable way to meet those demanding commitments successfully.
And this definition is so important because it just flips the narrative we see so often in movies or on TV.
Right.
The hero isn't the guy who breaks all the rules and pulls an all-nighter fueled by pizza and energy drinks. The real hero is the one who steps back, measures twice, cuts once.
And follows the checklist, even when the fire alarm is blaring. And there's a deep philosophical assumption under all of this, which is that the professional trusts the process more than they trust their own panicked intuition.
That's a great way to put it.
They understand that their own mental state is a critical factor in the stability of the system, just as much as the code they're writing. A calm mind produces clean work.
And a panicked mind.
A panicked mind introduces risk. Every time.
And this professional ideal, it stands in such sharp contrast to that other archetype you mentioned. The chaotic developer.
Yeah, the one who embodies that negative stress response. This is the person who's, sweating through their shirt at their desk,
Resorting to profanity.
slamming their keyboard, their mouse,
Yeah.
just constantly talking about how they're a victim of impossible deadlines and incompetent management.
We've all seen this person. Maybe we've even been this person at some point.
And it's so important to understand the pathology here. This chaotic behavior isn't just, annoying for the team. It is actively counterproductive. The sources are very clear.
It's not a sign of dedication.
No. This high-stress performance, which management often misinterprets as caring too much, is actually a deep indicator of unprofessionalism. It shows a complete reliance on emotional output rather than disciplined execution.
It's that person who feels the need to make loud, visible noises about how hard they're working. But if you actually look at the screen, what's happening? Are they writing good code?
Or are they introducing bugs?
Exactly. Are they introducing risk? We have this tendency to confuse the volume of someone's suffering with the quality of their output.
And the core conflict here, it just boils down to trust versus panic. The professional relies on structure and process. They see a deadline as a metric, something to be met through rigor and pre-established best practices.
Whereas the other person.
The chaotic individual sees that same deadline as an excuse to throw all that structure out the window, to just abandon their training and try to substitute sheer, undirected willpower and panic for disciplined work.
It's like if the surgeon starts shouting and slamming things, they're introducing noise and chaos into a system that requires absolute quiet and precision. They are actively increasing the likelihood of a catastrophic error. And the sources argue that when a developer starts slamming a keyboard or yelling about project requirements, they're doing the exact same thing.
They're degrading the quality of their own work, and they're degrading the environment for everyone around them. It doesn't compile the code any faster. It just introduces bugs and completely destroys team morale.
And there's an even deeper issue there, isn't there? That person in crisis, they fundamentally don't trust their own tools.
That's the real tell, yeah. If they truly believed in the effectiveness of, say, test-driven development, which we can unpack in a bit, they wouldn't just abandon it the second the deadline gets a little tight.
So the act of abandoning the discipline proves they never really trusted it.
It proves they only ever saw it as a kind of slow academic luxury, not what it actually is, a critical protective shield.
And that deep mistrust of your own process when the pressure's on. I mean, that's where the real failure begins. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of chaos.
It is. And to move this out of the theoretical and into the visceral reality of this destructive culture, we need to talk about a specific historical anecdote from the source material.
This story is a perfect and honestly a painful illustration of how uncontrolled pressure, financial strain, and a chaotic culture all combine into this perfect storm.
We're going back to 1988 to a startup called Clear Communications.
We often romanticize those early days of tech startups, don't we? The whole garage myth.
Yeah.
But this story shows the brutal, unsustainable reality when that financial desperation meets technical incoherence.
Clear Communications was, to put it simply, drowning. They couldn't get grounded financially, so they burned through their initial seed funding.
Okay.
Then they exhausted their second round of financing.
Oh, wow.
And by the time this story takes place, they were already deep into their third round with basically nothing to show for it.
So the pressure from investors must have been immense.
Astronomical. When the money is that tight, the pressure on the developers to deliver anything yesterday is just off the charts.
And the technical environment was just compounding that financial desperation.
It was. They were suffering from this intense product drift and technical strain. The initial idea for the product was actually pretty sound, but the underlying architecture to support it it never materialized properly.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the technical choices were a nightmare. The product started as this really complex mix of custom software and specialized hardware.
Which is already hard enough.
Right. Then, in an effort to cut costs and complexity, it shifted to being software only. Okay, a big pivot, but maybe manageable.
But it didn't stop there.
No. On top of that, the development platform itself migrated from standard PCs to SPARC stations.
And for our listeners who might not be familiar, that's a huge deal.
It's a massive deal. Shifting platforms like that isn't just like changing your operating system. It means rewriting core parts of the architecture, learning new compilers, battling totally new and unexpected constraints in the environment.
It's like you're building the entire foundation of a house. And then halfway through, you just decide, you know what, we're going to use entirely different materials and tools from now on.
And you don't pause the timeline for the roofers.
Right. The deadline doesn't move.
Exactly. And to make it all worse, the market itself kept shifting. Customer demands were migrating wildly. They started with these high-end bespoke requirements, and then they swung all the way over to low-end, high-volume needs.
So the company was essentially chasing a ghost, just constantly rebuilding their product to hit this moving target that was being defined by their dwindling cash reserves.
And the result of all that, 4 years of this turbulence, and the company generated, and this is a direct quote from the source speaker,
What was it?
a penny of income.
4 years. For a penny. That's 4 years of nonstop existential pressure on every single person in that building.
And that kind of environment is the perfect incubator for what the source calls the culture of chaos, the sweat equity model.
That phrase, sweat equity, it sounds so positive, like dedication. But here it meant something else.
Here it meant the physical and mental destruction of the employees, all in service of a failing cause.
So paint the picture for us. What did that office environment actually look like day to day? How did that pressure manifest?
It was just this constant, relentless stress. You're talking about developers regularly working 80 hours a week.
80.
Long nights, frequent weekends, just tethered to the office terminal. And the technical output, the code itself, it reflected that panic. They were writing functions in the C language that would frequently stretch to 3,000 lines long.
Okay, let's pause there, because for those who are less familiar with software architecture, can you explain why a 3,000-line function, especially in C, is just so disastrous?
Sure. It's a total disaster for, I'd say, 3 main reasons, and they're all related to the pressure they were under. First is just cognitive overload.
Your brain can't handle it.
The human brain can only hold so many details in its working memory at one time. A function that long is functionally impossible to reason about in its entirety. You can't see it all at once.
So you introduce bugs by accident.
Constantly. You make a change on line 200, and you can't possibly see the unintended consequences it's going to have on line 2500. So that's one. Second is testing impossibility.
You can't test it.
You can't write a unit test for a function that massive. You can only test its large, unpredictable behaviors, which means every time you fix one bug, you inevitably introduce 3 new ones somewhere else.
And the third reason?
Technical debt. Just a mountain of it. Those functions are completely unmaintainable. Every single line of code you add to it just compounds the debt, and it basically guarantees that the next deadline will be missed even faster than the last one.
So it's the ultimate example of dirty always means slow.
The ultimate manifestation, yes. The pressure led to chaotic coding, which guaranteed they'd miss the deadline, which then increased the pressure, which forced them to do even more chaotic coding. It's a death spiral.
Wow. And the behavioral symptoms that came with that technical chaos.
They were horrific. The atmosphere wasn't just stressful, it was actively aggressive. There were constant arguments, shouting matches, name-calling.
So toxic.
Incredibly, the environment bred this intense professional paranoia. Intrigue, subterfuge. People were more worried about who was getting the credit or the blame than they were about actually solving the problem.
And the source mentions physical evidence of this toxicity. That's the part that really stuck with me.
Yeah, the physical evidence. Fists being punched through the drywall.
In the office.
In the office, pens being thrown so hard at whiteboards that they would embed themselves in the surface. And maybe the most disturbing detail, developers using the tips of their pencils to emboss these detailed, angry caricatures of their annoying colleagues right into the plaster of the office walls.
So you're working in an office where the walls themselves are monuments to chronic rage.
Yeah. The speaker describes it very simply as a never-ending supply of anger and stress.
And the deadlines, the things driving all this, they were just completely arbitrary.
Totally arbitrary, dictated by the next trade show or a big customer demo or some internal milestone. They always felt too short, and the schedules were always overwhelming.
And the person telling the story, they weren't just an observer.
Oh, no. They were a key participant. They were one of the ones working those 80-hour weeks. They were one of the employees being praised by management for their sweat equity.
The belief system was just work harder, work faster, or you're fired.
That was it. The system actively rewarded self-destruction.
This sounds less like a startup story and more like a corporate horror story. A true cautionary tale about sacrificing your long-term professional health for this illusion of short-term speed.
It is. But thankfully, the story also contains the most critical part, the turning point. A moment of personal reckoning that serves as the foundation for all the proactive solutions we're about to discuss.
So tell us about that personal breaking point. How did the speaker finally escape that cycle?
It happened at home, not at the office. The speaker's wife, seeing the incredible toll this lifestyle was taking on him, she forced him into this moment of radical self-confrontation.
What did she do?
She made him look in the mirror, and he realized he didn't look well, he was miserable, and he was becoming this angry, destructive presence to the people he loved most.
And that confrontation, his initial reaction was just more of the same, right?
Pure, uncontrolled stress. He just stormed out of the house.
But then something changed.
He did. The source says he walked for about 30 minutes, just seething, letting all that adrenaline run its course. And then, as the physical reaction started to subside, the intellectual realization hit him.
He started to laugh.
He started to laugh. He laughed at the complete and total absurdity of it all.
The folly of his stress, as you put it.
Yes. He was laughing at this poor schmuck who was destroying his own health, alienating his family, and performing all these theatrics in a failing startup, all in the name of professional dedication. He realized the dedication was completely misdirected and self-defeating.
And that single moment of clarity was the trigger for a complete transformation.
An immediate one. He stopped the crazy hours. He completely abandoned the high-stress lifestyle. That meant no more throwing pens, no more physical displays of aggression.
And critically.
And most importantly, he stopped writing those enormous, unmaintainable 3,000-line C functions.
He made a conscious professional choice.
He did. He decided he was going to enjoy his career and do his work well, but he was not going to do it stupidly anymore.
And the outcome really validates that entire approach.
It does. He left that job as professionally as I could, he said. He transitioned into a consulting career and has never called another person boss since that day.
The lesson there is just paramount, isn't it? Chaos is a failure strategy.
Discipline is the path to freedom.
It's the empirical proof. If embracing chaos led to 4 years of misery and a penny of income, then the professional alternative is the only viable path forward.
And that brings us to the proactive part of this, the how.
Right. That story is incredibly sobering. And it drives home this core insight. The best way to handle pressure isn't to just become better at enduring suffering.
Go.
It's to actively avoid the conditions that cause that chronic destructive pressure in the first place.
And that shift from being reactive in a crisis to being proactive to avoid it, that is the definition of the professional mindset. It's about building resistance to pressure, not just immunity to pain.
Okay, so we've got 2 primary proactive strategies to unpack from the source material. The first one is about managing commitments. The source calls it the strategic deadline thwart.
This goes right to the heart of the corporate relationship, doesn't it? Most crises begin the moment a professional accepts a commitment they know deep down cannot be met.
And you can see why it happens. Businesses, they want firm commitments. They're trying to eliminate risk and properly manage their resources, staffing, marketing, funding. It makes sense.
Of course. But accepting an unrealistic commitment doesn't eliminate risk. It just creates a hidden, massive risk that undermines the very goal of managing the business properly.
You're just setting everyone up for a surprise failure down the line.
Exactly. So the professional stance here is it's nuanced. Professionals always strive to find a way to honor the goals of the business. They want the product to succeed.
Yeah.
But they do not necessarily accept commitments that are arbitrarily made for them by, say, non-technical staff or senior management without giving their own rigorous professional input.
Okay, this is where the friction comes in, right?
Yeah.
I understand the philosophy, but how do you actually apply this in a high-pressure corporate environment without just getting labeled as difficult or not a team player?
That's the crucial challenge.
If a vice president walks over and tells me, this has to ship by October 1st, and I just say no, I could be damaging my career, right?
And the sources guide us here by emphasizing how you frame it. It's about professional framing. You never just say, I can't do it. You say, I can meet the deadline, but we must decide which features to cut. Or, I can deliver the full scope, but we must adjust the deadline to be realistic.
So you frame the conversation around risk mitigation and options, not just refusal.
Precisely. You shift the conversation from what feels like a moral argument about your personal effort to a technical discussion about probability and trade-offs. You become the expert defining the feasibility envelope.
Not the person blocking the timeline.
You're protecting the business from its own poor estimation.
Mm-hmm.
You explain that if you accept this unrealistic deadline, you guarantee you'll have to create technical debt, like those 3,000-line C functions, which in turn guarantees a higher failure rate and a slower delivery on the next project.
So it means you have to be highly disciplined in your own estimation techniques. You have to make sure every commitment you make is defensible with data.
And if, despite your best efforts, you realize you can't meet a promise that was made, maybe the scope shifted or some unforeseen technical hurdle came up, you have to own that responsibility immediately.
You communicate it early.
You have to. And the sources acknowledge this is hardest when the pressure is truly existential. When the business is failing and paychecks are delayed, like in that 1988 case.
But the ultimate takeaway is about professional integrity.
Yes. Behaving professionally during that turmoil, upholding your standards, communicating clearly, that allows you to hold your head high. Your reputation, your integrity, your process, they all survive the failure of that one company. And that is invaluable when you're looking for your next job.
It's not just career insurance, it's personal survival insurance. And that leads us directly into the second proactive strategy, staying clean, which is all about dismantling the quick and dirty lie.
This is the perfect technical counterpart to managing your commitments. The temptation when you're faced with a tightening deadline is always to cut corners, to create a mess, to just hack the system together because it feels faster.
But the big realization that professionals have to internalize is that quick and dirty is an oxymoron.
Oh.
The sources state this so definitively. Dirty always means slow.
Always. Because messes, technical debt, shortcuts, they are the single biggest cause of missed dates and broken commitments down the line.
They're like landmines.
They're landmines you're placing under your own project that are guaranteed to explode during that final crunch time. If you cut a corner now to save yourself 2 hours,
You'll pay it back later.
you will often pay back 20 hours later in debugging, integration headaches, and system instability.
So the application here is just maintaining this relentless discipline about the cleanliness of your systems, your code, your design.
Yes. And for those outside of development, let's briefly define what we mean by clean architecture and disciplines like test-driven development, or TDD.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
A clean system is modular, it's well-named, it's logically organized. Clean architecture means dependencies only flow in one direction, which makes the whole system predictable and easy to test. And TDD is a foundational discipline where you write a failing test before you write a single line of production code.
So why is TDD specifically so important for avoiding pressure?
Because it's an instant feedback loop and a constant safety net. If that surgeon we talked about were using TDD, it would be the equivalent of them performing one small step and then immediately verifying that the patient's vital signs are still stable.
I see.
If a developer writes a test and it fails when that changed the code, they know instantly where the error is. That instantaneous feedback prevents bugs from compounding and turning into a week-long crisis.
So it might slow you down by 5 minutes right now.
But it saves you 5 days of frantic debugging later on. So avoiding pressure really starts by refusing to introduce that kind of complexity. You have to avoid writing those monstrous, unmaintainable C functions because their very existence guarantees the next crisis.
Cleanliness is a mechanism for predictable output and reliable delivery.
It's the professional's equivalent of a pilot's pre-flight checklist. You don't skip the checklist because the plane is running late.
You run the checklist because the plane must not crash. Okay, so we've established the foundation. Manage your commitments, keep your systems clean. Those strategies will minimize that chronic stress. But we have to be realistic. Even the best laid plans go awry. Pressure sometimes hits you despite your best efforts. The market pivots, a key team member leaves. The initial design turns out to be fundamentally flawed.
Or, yeah, you just missed a commitment. Despite all your diligence, it happens.
It does. And that's where the professional understands that pressure is just a variable of professional life. The focus has to shift completely from avoidance to weathering the storm with maximum effectiveness.
This is where we get into what the sources call crisis discipline.
And they offer this fascinating litmus test for professional integrity here. You learn what you truly believe by watching your own behavior when you're in a crisis.
Yes. If you follow your established disciplines when everything is collapsing, when the business is screaming for immediate results, that proves you actually believe in those disciplines. You trust their efficacy.
But if you abandon your key practices, you drop TDD, you stop refactoring, you start writing those massive functions again, the moment the crisis hits.
You prove you never actually believed in them in the first place. You only treated them as these academic niceties, not as what they are, essential survival tools.
So the rule is immutable.
It has to be. Choose the disciplines you are comfortable with, whether that's TDD, pair programming, automated testing, continuous integration, and then follow them all the time. They have to be your default, especially in the depths of a crisis. That consistency is what defines the professional.
Okay, so let's unpack the tactical components of crisis discipline. There are 5 of them. And the first one is maybe the most counterintuitive, especially when the world is screaming at you to hurry up,
It's don't panic and slow down.
which is an immense mental challenge.
It is. The worst possible reaction you can have is that adrenaline-fueled rush. The frantic activity, the sleepless nights, the sitting at your desk just fretting and not accomplishing anything. That temptation to rush and skip steps must be resisted at all costs. Because rushing only drives you deeper into the hole you're already in.
But I have to challenge this a little bit. If I'm already behind schedule and I tell my supervisor I am going to slow down now, won't that just be perceived as laziness or a lack of effort? Especially if they're already upset that I'm under-delivering? How do I manage the optics of that?
And that is the political skill of the professional. You don't frame it as slowing down. You frame it as increasing deliberation.
Ah, I like that.
You state that the high pressure has introduced variability and risk into the system, and that the only way to ensure predictable output and avoid regression is through a measured, methodical pace. You are slowing down by 1 unit of speed in order to increase predictability by 10 units.
That makes perfect sense. You're moving from frantic movement to strategic movement.
Exactly. Instead of rushing, you have to pause, take a deep breath, think the problem through deliberately. You plot a realistic, viable course to the best possible outcome you can get, and then you drive towards that goal at a reasonable, steady pace.
The calm professional knows the biggest mistake they can make under pressure is making an unnecessary mistake caused by rushing.
That's it. And that leads to the second critical step, which is rooted in communication and transparency.
Communicate and avoid surprises.
Secrecy is a poison in these high-pressure situations. If you realize you are in trouble, if you know you're going to miss that original deadline, you have to inform your team and your superiors immediately. Proactive communication is a debt reducer.
And you don't just show up with the problem, you show up with a plan.
That's right. You tell them you're in the hole, you articulate your best plan for climbing out, and you proactively ask for their input and guidance. This collaborative approach immediately reduces your individual pressure and frames the problem as a team challenge, not just your personal failure.
The risk of hiding it is just astronomical. The sources give this stark warning. Nothing makes people more angry and less rational than surprises. Surprises multiply the pressure by 10.
It's so true. If you conceal a problem for 3 weeks and then it explodes the day before the launch, you've done 2 terrible things. You've wasted 3 weeks of potential mitigation time.
And you've destroyed your credibility.
You have sacrificed all of your professional credibility. If, however, you communicate the problem calmly and early on, you retain control, you retain credibility, and you retain the ability to dictate the best next steps.
That transparency buys you the political capital you need for the third principle, which is relying on your disciplines. Or even better, double down on them.
The whole point of establishing these rigorous professional disciplines in the first place is so they can act as your guardrails when the pressure is at its highest. They are your emergency procedure manual.
So this is not the time to question them.
This is absolutely not the time to question their efficacy or abandon them. The professional insight here is that when you feel the need to move faster, you must become more deliberate.
This is the most counterintuitive part of the whole crisis response.
It is. If you are panicking and you're looking for the fastest possible route out, the fastest route is the disciplined route. This means if you follow TDD, you must write even more tests than you usually would.
Why?
Because you're making risky changes under stress, and those tests are the only thing that can guarantee you haven't just broken the existing system in 5 other places.
Okay, let's make this practical. This source talks about being a merciless refactorer during a crunch. Doesn't refactoring, cleaning up code, slow you down when you need to be adding features?
It means you're doing tactical surgical refactoring, not a general system cleanup. Merciless refactoring in a crisis means you focus only on the area of code you are currently touching to fix the bug or implement the feature.
I see.
You refactor that one function, that one module, until it is pristine and perfectly structured for the new change you're about to make, and you use your automated tools to ensure it's safe.
So I don't go and try to clean up that whole 3,000-line C file from the story,
No.
but I make sure the 50 lines I'm currently modifying are isolated and clean before I apply my fix.
Precisely. That small act of cleaning the immediate vicinity of the change ensures predictability. It prevents you from writing dirty code on top of already dirty code, which is the very definition of digging yourself deeper into the hole.
The professional mantra is clear. The path through the pressure cooker is reliance on what already works. Just enhanced by more rigor.
Right. If you start resorting to hacks and shortcuts now, you are merely guaranteeing that the next crisis will arrive sooner and be even worse. You're sacrificing all your future predictability for the illusion of present speed.
And that leads directly into our final and maybe the most powerful strategy for managing a crisis. Get help and pair.
When the heat is really on, our natural tendency is to isolate ourselves.
Right. We want to just bury our heads in the code and fix it ourselves,
Yeah.
usually out of shame or some misplaced desire to prove our own competency.
And the professional advice is the exact opposite. When pressure hits, find an associate and start pair programming immediately. The benefits of pairing in a crisis are immediate, and they are profound.
So let's start with the technical benefits. You get the job done faster, and you introduce far fewer defects. Why does having two people work on one problem yield faster results when you're under pressure?
Because the partners serve as mutual quality control and as mental stabilizers. Under stress, your focus wavers, your patience erodes, and you start to overlook simple errors. Your partner is there to catch those errors.
They're like the living spell checker in Logic Gate.
They are, and they hold you accountable to those disciplines we just discussed.
So when I'm about to skip writing the unit test just to save a few minutes, my partner is there to say, wait, what about the test first?
Exactly. They keep you honest. And secondly, the partner prevents panic just by being there. You are far less likely to slam your equipment or vent your rage when someone is sitting right next to you, relying on your composure. It introduces immediate social accountability.
And when you lose focus due to fatigue, which is inevitable in a long crunch,
Your partner is there to pick up the thread. It's like having a co-pilot who ensures the plane stays on course even if you momentarily drift off.
the collaborative resilience this creates must be huge.
It's crucial, and the sources emphasize this isn't a one-way street. There's a reciprocal duty here. When you see a colleague who is clearly under intense, visible pressure, they're in that sweating and fretting stage, you should proactively offer to pair with them, to help pull them out of the technical and emotional hole they're in.
That really moves crisis management from being the solitary act of heroism to a collective act of professional responsibility. Pairing in a high-pressure environment is the ultimate force multiplier for discipline and quality.
It is. And when the crisis is finally over, you can bet that the professional who maintained their composure, communicated clearly, and relied on structured collaboration will be the one management trusts the next time the stakes are high.
The one who punched a hole in the wall.
Not the one who punched the wall.
This has been an incredibly detailed synthesis, moving all the way from the philosophical definition of professionalism down to the practical, tactical steps you need to take in the face of collapse.
The trick to handling pressure, really, when you distill everything from these sources, is a clear two-part system, and it's all designed for sustainability.
Okay, part one. Avoid destructive pressure whenever you can.
And you achieve that by becoming an expert at managing your commitments, framing every negotiation around risk and trade-offs, and maintaining impeccably clean systems, forever rejecting that illusion that dirty can ever be quick.
And then part two. Weather the pressure when avoidance fails.
You weather it by staying calm, by choosing increased deliberation over frantic rushing, by communicating immediately to avoid those catastrophic surprises, by consistently relying on and even doubling down on your core disciplines.
And by proactively using the power of pairing and mutual support.
That's the whole system.
That haunting anecdote of the 1988 startup, it provides the necessary warning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Professionalism is not measured by how many hours you work or how loudly you shout or how much sweat equity you put in.
Yeah.
It is measured by your ability to maintain structure, predictability, and discipline under duress. The chaotic developer believes that stress equals dedication. The true professional understands that stress, when you allow it to dictate your behavior, equals failure.
The ultimate professional standard is that surgeon on the operating table. Steady hands, clear voice, rigorous adherence to process, regardless of the fact that a human life or a crucial business function is hanging in the balance.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to chew on as you reflect on your own practices this week. If the sources are correct, and your true belief in a professional discipline, be it TDD, refactoring, or simply keeping your function small, is only validated by adhering to it when everything is actively falling apart.
Then we have to ask ourselves a pretty hard question.
What widely accepted professional practice are you secretly willing to abandon the moment a deadline becomes truly scary?
Where does your belief in process end and your internal panic begin?
If you find yourself thinking, you know what, I'll just skip that test just this once, or I'll come back and refactor this monster function later, I promise.
You are planting the seed for your next crisis.
So think about where those lines are drawn for you.
Until next time, we hope you feel inspired to slow down a little and keep things clean.